Our topic today is team dynamics and conflict management, and you would find them in your business roles section of work. Right, of course, guys, there's a couple of things that I would like to explain to you first before we carry on, and that is, if you would see on your screen, I've highlighted the word dynamics. Now, what does dynamic mean? Now, guys, dynamics means if you take something that is flexible and it goes back to its original position, but it is changing, and that is what dynamics means. If a person is dynamic, a person changes, and the same with a team. A team is not very static in the way it is formed. It goes through changes all the time, and we need to know how to manage those changes as good managers of people. So that is the word dynamic. Right. Dynamic, of course, means to be changeable or changing or adaptable to different situations. Right. Now, guys, in this section of work, in your exam guidelines, it requires you to know the following things. Now, guys, I would like you to use this as a tick box. So you go through your exam guideline and you say, what do I need to know from this section? You take your pencil and your pen and you say, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, and then you should be okay for your exam. Because mostly the exams would be set exactly like this from your exam guideline. So let's quickly go through them. Right, the first one is you need to be able to discuss the importance of teamwork. You need to outline, mention, name the stages of team development. Now, guys, you need to take particular notice to the different action verbs there. Right, define the term conflict that we will do a bit later. And explain the causes of conflict. That is explained. We will also do this a bit later in this section. Outline, mention, explain, discuss the functions of workplace forums. Now, that particular one is very important because it does carry through to grade 12. And then the last one, explain the difference between trade unions and workplace forums, which is also very important. It sounds similar when you look at the functions, but they are actually two very complete and different things. And next year you guys will do the Labor Relations Act, and this comes out there very prominently again.
Mr. Van Zyl, just to illustrate something with regards to the action verbs, by this stage, grade 11s, you should understand what the expectation is. If we say explain, if we ask discuss or outline, you should have an expectation. You should understand the expectation where your answers are concerned and how the marker is going to be marking that particular question. So take note of those action verbs: explain, define, outline, discuss. All of those are very important going forward.
Right, thank you, Mr. Edwards. Guys, I cannot that you need to know very, very well. If you are still not certain, go and ask your teacher, or ask, if she's not certain or he's not certain, let them ask the subject advisors what you need to do in each of those verbs, because it's very important for grade 12. I've seen it plenty of times that you can see that the learner, and that is at the end of year question papers, the learner knows exactly what they want to write. But because it's not set out correctly in the way the verb wants it to be done, they lose a lot of marks unnecessarily. So please make sure that you understand those action verbs and what it requires. Right, so I'm going to carry on. Now, guys, the one thing that you need to do is to explain the importance of teamwork. Now, again, here, guys, you need to look at the action verb. The action verb there is explain. Now, what will happen is when you explain something, you need to put a statement down and then qualify the statement. Who, what, where, how, so that, because, those kind of things, to break the sentence up and make it a full sentence, to explain exactly what you want to say. That is what is required by explain. The second thing that you need to look at, and you can look at the screen, is the mark allocation there, and that is 6 marks. Now, guys, in business studies, we mostly use double mark answers. So I would require 3 facts. Now, guys, in a 150 mark paper, in section B, you would probably, the highest mark allocation would be 6. I cannot see really 8 mark questions, although it's not impossible, it's very unlikely. And a 6-mark question is probably the max. So that means you need to remember at least 3 facts per each of these things that the exam guideline asks you to do. I would recommend 4 because in the in the section C question you would also need to answer a bit more. So if you remember 4 of these bullet points that we are going to do now, you should be doing very well in your exam. So let's have a look at the answers. Explain the importance of teamwork. Why is it important? The first one, teamwork promotes unity. Unity where? In the workplace. Now you can see the statement and the qualifier there. Teamwork promotes unity is a sentence on its own. You can break it up there, and that means only 1 mark. But now I'm qualifying it with where. Where does it promote unity? In the workplace. That is your 2nd mark. Right. The next one, teamwork offers differing perspectives and feedback. Now guys, later on, the very last bullet point that we are going to do here, we're going to speak about a term called synergy. Now synergy means that if 2 people work together, the sum of those outcomes is worth more than what it would have been if these 2 people were working alone. So in an equation you would express it like 2 plus 2 equals 7. If 2 people were just working on their own, their output would be what 1 single person could have produced. The moment that we collaborate, we feed off each other's experience and knowledge and skill, and the outcome is much bigger. Some people are very good at one thing, another person is not good at that same thing, but they're good at something else, and they fill each other on. They fill in the gaps where it might be lacking. So therefore, it offers that differing perspectives to solve problems, and that means also more creativity. Right. The next one, teamwork provides improved efficiency and productivity. It all goes back to that term synergy. If we work together, what we can achieve is worth more than if we would have worked alone. Right. The next one, teamwork provides great learning opportunities because team members learn from each other and they grow. This actually comes from the grade 10 curriculum. Team members learn from each other and they grow. Right, and then the last one, teamwork promotes workplace synergy. Now, if I were you, I would have made a note, 2 plus 2 equals 7, because the sum of the parts or the result is greater than the sum of its parts. That is what it means. Mr. Edwards?
Yeah, Mr. Van Zyl, just with regards to what we come across quite a lot when we are marking papers, learners would give the first aspect there. So if we look at the first point there, teamwork promotes unity. That's what we see. In order to get the second mark, you need to be able to state, where does it take place? In the workplace. So just keep in mind, going back to that action verb explain, it requires the qualifier. The statement is teamwork promotes unity. The qualifier is, where does it take place? In the workplace. So keep that in mind. You don't want to be causing issues when it comes to your paper and you're not getting the full marks just because you haven't qualified that statement. So keep that in mind going forward.
Right. Now guys, I'm not done completely with the slide yet. I would like to show you the picture that I've chosen to explain synergy and that whole idea of learning from another. Now, these are all doctors. They're specialists in different areas. The one doctor knows about one thing, the other doctor knows more about something else. And together they can form a holistic point of view of what might be wrong and what could be the cure for something. So if these guys didn't work together and there was one doctor, the result is not the same as having all of these people working together, giving differing perspectives on a particular problem.
Yeah, and Mr. Van Zyl, that's very common across different industries.
And across different industries.
What would probably happen there is that as you say, they've got different skills, different experience, and this would probably happen on a weekly basis where they would look at all the patients that they have over that week, and then they would be able to provide some sort of experience in a particular area that would hopefully be able to help the situation that patient is going through.
Right. Then, guys, this one is a very important slide. Now, before I go through all of the different things that you see on your screen there, all of you would probably have experienced something of this before. Most of you have participated in some type of team sport, or you've participated in a group work activity of some kind over a period of time. And now all teams go through these stages, and this was proposed by a guy named Tuckman, and Tuckman said that all teams go through stages of development. Now, when we do this section of work, I want you to think back to the teams that you have participated in before and see if you can recognize these stages. I always use the example, and I think I might not speak to everybody now, but the show called Survivor. Survivor flourishes on this particular theory, where teams get together and then they develop over time. So if you can, go and find out how Survivor works. It explains this very well. Right. Now, guys, Tuckman said that every team goes through different stages. The first stage is called the forming stage. Right. Now, the forming stage is the stage where the teams firstly get together and then they sort each other out. They work very tentatively because we don't know exactly what our role in this team is and where we're heading and all of those things, because we firstly formed and got together. That is called the forming stage. Now, guys, after forming, when the team members start to know one another, and then tensions start to come to the fore because people's different personalities start to show. And also something very important, who is going to be the leader of this group? Every team in the world, doesn't matter if it's actually your friendship group or whatever, every team or every group has a specific leader. And those leaders are not always appointed or been given a task or that role to play. It is how the team interaction, that dynamic, that changing environment plays out. Now, guys, people now start to vie for that position of leadership, and the clash of ideas and ideologies and direction starts taking place. Now, that is why it's called storming. Thunder and lightning and all of those things, very tumultuous, very aggressive. That is the storming stage. Now, guys, every team needs to go through storming. It is a very important aspect because we need to get those positions in place before we can move on. Now, unfortunately, guys, many teams are stuck in the storming stage and the team would never go about. So the way we handle storming will depend, or your success of the team will depend very highly on how the storming stage is managed. Now, guys, what is storming? It is the conflict because of the leadership position and differing opinions because the people's personalities start to show. Now, guys, after the storming stage, we have now entered a stage where we have accepted different leadership groups. We have come to an agreement on the direction that we are going into, but it does not mean that conflict is completely over, but at least we are starting to settle now into a rhythm of working, and that is called the norming stage. The team members start helping each other, and there is, of course, less conflict. It doesn't say that there's no conflict, there is still conflict. Now, guys, from the norming stage, people's roles start to be defined. I can work autonomously because I know exactly what is expected of me. I know the direction I'm going into. There's very minimal contact between the leaders and the group members because we all work as a unit, and that is called the performing stage. They commit to the same goal and fall into certain decisions, even if they personally disagree with it. Why? Because we all have now bought into the direction where we are heading, and that is the performing stage. Now, guys, that is the stage that every team aspires to, or where it needs to get to. Unfortunately, if something is interrupted in that stages of development and they cannot get past storming, then they will never ever get to the performing stage. No team is already a perfect blend of everything. It needs to go through these stages. And then, guys, finally, it comes to the last stage, and that is adjourning. And adjourning basically means the team is now broken up. You see it a lot of times into project industries, where a person has worked in a particular project for a period of time, and now the project comes to an end and the team splits up, and each of these individual members go and join different other teams to work on a different project. Now, guys, if these projects have taken part over a number of years, there's these close relationships that are formed in those teams. So normally this breakup goes with a bit of sadness and a sense of loss and all of that. That is also now the place where the team members start focusing on finishing up on the last tasks that they need to do in this stage, and that is called adjourning. The focus is on the completion of the task and the ending of the project. Now, guys, before I move on to the next slide, I'm going to do a question that is in your booklet next. But before I do that, guys, please know that you need to be able to identify these different stages of team development from case studies. That is mostly how they ask this. Or they could ask you to discuss the stages of team development. Now, guys, if they ask you to discuss the stages of team development, and that goes for anything that's a process where there's steps, firstly start with naming the particular stage. So you start by naming forming, and then you give me one discussion piece for describing that particular thing. So, guys, what you've got on the screen should be enough to give you the marks that you need. Okay, they may also ask you to discuss two different stages, so then I would urge you to consult your core notes or even this pack over here that you've just received, and go and study that content, but not more than 2 bullet points per stage, because there's too much content to go through. So, right, without further ado, there are some sample questions there. Indicate the concept each of the following statements refers to. The first one, a group of people organized to work together, and that, of course, is called a team. Right, a joint action by a group of people in which each person strives to work to a common goal. Now it's the working part, so that is called teamwork. And the difference or disagreements or disharmony between persons, guys, that we will do a bit later, but that, of course, is called conflict. So you would get that in that summary of all the different verbs and things that you need to learn. The concepts that you need to learn. Now, guys, it brings me to the last one. Sorry, Mr. Edwards.
No, okay.
It brings me to the last one for this section, is question 2. Indicate the stage of development in each of the following statements. Now, guys, that is mostly how these questions are asked. Okay, so please remember that you need to be able to identify it. It's a very, very favorite question for Section A questions as well. But as I say, it carries through to grade 12, so make sure you know this very, very well. So the first one says, team members start helping each other and there is less conflict. Now, guys, that less conflict and start helping each other always refers to the norming stage. You can fill that into your booklet or mark. The focus is on the completion of the task or ending of the project. That's at the end of the project life cycle. That, of course, means adjourning. Right, and the last one, individuals gather information and impressions about each other. Now, guys, remember, we don't know each other. We're starting to suss each other out. That happens when the team first starts, and that is called the forming stage. Right, and then, guys, there's also a question, example question that is in the form of a case study, and it says Cadence Suppliers. Cadence Suppliers has a very successful team of employees, but lately they noticed that there is tension between the employees and power struggles occur frequently. Now, guys, If you look at the questions, this is a typical section B question. Identify the stage of team development that Ks find themselves in. Now guys, let's stop there for a moment. You can see that the sentence carries on, but now I need to underline the action verbs. Firstly is I need to identify first, right? The next one is the word quote. Now I will get to the quote just now because it requires you to do something very specific, and please don't be caught out. So guys, when I identify, I would then go back to the case study and find words that will give me the clues, and I would underline them. Oh, sorry, also look at your mark allocation there. The identification would most cases be 2 marks, and the quote will be 1 mark, so that is what makes up the 3 marks. So let's quickly have a look. I would identify keywords. I'm looking at tension. Now remember thunder and lightning and all of those things that I've said. And also power struggles. So tension, conflict. And that basically will give you the clue on what the answer is. I will do that just now. The next question says, explain 2 other. Now guys, this is very important. It says 2 other. If you identify 1.1, the stage of team development incorrectly, and you name the correct one in the follow-up question, then you're going to forfeit those marks. You need to identify correctly, because otherwise the follow-on question will also be wrong. Now guys, it says 2 other. You cannot go back to the one that you've identified. It must be 2 other ones. They will not accept the one that you have identified. So please make sure that that you know that. So let's quickly go for the memos. Oh, very importantly, I'll keep on forgetting, is the mark allocation. Now you see, they are looking for 2 other stages. And remember what I said, you're going to name the stage. That's going to be 2 marks. And then 1 sentence for a discussion. That's going to be 1 mark. So it's 3 per stage. And that will make up your 6 marks. So let's quickly see how I've done this. Now the first one, of course, the answer was storming. And now the motivation. Now guys, the motivation was a quote. Now remember what I told you about quoting. Quoting means you need to use the words verbatim. That means as it is in the case study. Do not use your own words. And guys, please don't try to shorten the sentence by only giving me 3 words, because you might miss the essence of the quote. And that means for something very simple, you will lose a mark. Rather quote the entire sentence. Right.
Mr. Van Zyl, sorry,
Yes, sir.
just one thing that I pick up quite often when marking papers is the learners forget to give the motivation. They'll give the identification of storming, for example, but they forget the second part of the question. So they're actually forfeiting those that 1 mark at the end there, the quote. So just keep in mind when you are reading questions, you've got to answer the entire question if there is a second part to the question. So keep that in mind.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Right, so now we get to the 1.2 part, the 2 other stages. Now the one was forming. I'm just going to say also there's something very important here. The marker is only going to mark the first 2 because it says 2 other stages. The moment that there's a qualification on that question, then the marker is instructed to only consider the first 2 responses. So the one is forming. The first stage is when the team members get to know each other. You can see that the 2 marks go for the naming of the stage, and then just 1 sentence for the discussion. Right, and the second one, norming, team members start helping each other and there is less conflict. Now guys, it could have been any of these other 2 except for storming, because storming was already identified in 1.1. The question asked for 2 other. Right, now let's just look at the tips that I've given there. Start by naming the stage first and then discuss it. Cannot use the same stage as the one identified in 2.1 because they asked for 1 other or 2 other. And then the marker will only mark the first two stages. Whether they are right or wrong, only the first two will be considered, and the rest will be receiving 2 lines and probably something to the following: E exceeded the number of responses required, ENR R. Right, so please don't make that mistake and wasting a lot of time. Right, now guys, I'm going to hand you over to Mr. Edwards, that is really a specialist on conflict, so he will be taking you through conflict management.
Thank you very much, Mr. Van Zyl. All right, so we're going to be discussing conflict management. Now, this is obviously a critical aspect where a manager or a leader is concerned, because conflict can often, or has a bad reputation, fair enough. Okay, but it's often something which is necessary in order to result in innovation and in creativity, because people have their say. They've got their opinion and they put it out there. Right, so it does need to be managed though, because the last thing that you want is conflict bubbling under the surface and then it boils over into something which is far greater than it should have been. Right, so it's something that needs to be dealt with sooner rather than later, and it should be seen as a positive aspect at the end of the day.
Mr.
All right,
Edwardson,
so conflict management necessary.
Sorry, it is absolutely necessary to go through conflict. If you go back to the stages of team development, the storming stage is unfortunately a very necessary stage, uncomfortable stage, but necessary. But we need to still manage it. We cannot sweep it under the cover, because then we will never get past the storming stage.
Yep.
It is very important.
And as Mr. Van Zyl referred to earlier when he was going through the stages of development, it is a common occurrence that the teams actually get stuck in that conflict stage where people don't necessarily want to get into the norming stage or the performing stage, because they're continually in conflict with each other. So it is something that needs to be managed, and leaders need to actually put their hands up and sort it out as soon as possible. All right. So let's have a look at a definition to the term conflict. And as you can see, this is also put in the aspect of a question. All right. So this is the type of question that you could get. Define the term conflict, generally for probably 2 marks. Conflict refers to a clash of opinions, ideas, or viewpoints, and where? In the workplace. So you can see how you've got the statement and then the qualifier as well. What you could also put there, a disagreement between 2 or more parties in a workplace. So you could have 2 people involved, but often what happens is those 2 people garner some support, so that's why it's mentioned there, 2 or more parties that come into play there. So that's the definition of the term conflict. Right.
Mr. Edwards, I also would like to just say on the last point, a disagreement between 2 or more parties in the workplace is very important, because later on, we in grade 12 at least, you guys will do grievances. And a grievance is a disagreement between a worker and the employer. Actually, that's a grievance. Right, so you need to understand that when it says 2 or more parties, then that's conflict between normal people. But it's not a grievance, and you need to know the difference between conflict and grievance later on. So that last bullet point is actually quite important.
All right. Okay, just take note of what we've got up on the screen there. That's obviously exactly what Mr. Van Zyl has been referring to. A grievance is lodged by one person and is more formal than conflict, whereas conflict exists between 2 or more people. So people could have a disagreement, but as soon as it becomes an issue where it might become a legal standpoint, then it becomes a grievance. So keep that in mind for next year. Now, obviously, we need to look at some of the causes of conflict. There could be a number of aspects that come into play. Let's have a look at some of the examples that we discuss in business studies. Firstly, differences in background. All right, differences in background. We all come from different backgrounds, and the background that we have come from has put together the opinions that we might have, the personality that we might portray. And with that, might result in disagreements with someone else. All right, so that's differences in background. Ignoring procedures, cutting corners, making things a little bit easier. Sometimes that can cause conflict as well because you're not actually following the required procedure.
Mr. Edwards, I've got a good example there. I used to be a dispatch manager many moons ago, and my job was to get parcels out on time and to the customers in a specific time frame. Now, for that to happen, we had a procedure. You would place an order, and the customer knew that if the order was placed today, it will be picked. Picking means I'm taking the stuff that was ordered from the shelf and putting it in the box. That will only happen by the next day and shipped out the next day. So you would know that you cannot expect delivery within the first 2 days. If you place your order, the soonest that it would be ready for collection is the following day. But now you have salespeople that make a lot of promises to their customers because you don't want to let your customer feel let down, and they start pressing in orders before the other, and that mangles up the entire system. And eventually, before you know it, the customer screams and yells at me because his order wasn't out on time, but that was because the system that was very well designed to handle the inflow of requests were made in a specific way, and it was circumvented, and now it puts a bottleneck in the entire process. And that brought a lot of conflict between my department and the one of sales because of this issue. So it did create conflict because we're not following the rules that are put in place to make sure everything runs smoothly.
That bureaucracy, those procedures are there for a reason.
Are there
so that
for a reason.
We have a situation where everything runs smoothly. So very important, great example there. All right, moving on to the next one. Lack of cooperation, the inability or the unwillingness to work together. All right, so that might be because you've got different opinions, differentiating opinions with someone else, and you may not be willing to work with that person. And with that can result in conflict and the inability to actually be productive and efficient in the workplace. All right, personality differences. This leads into or is associated with the first point that we made, differences in background. But we all know people that we might not get along with. Maybe someone's a little bit loud, someone's a little bit introverted. That might cause a little bit of a conflict or abrasiveness between the two people, and that can be a problem going forward. The best situation is to admit that you have those differences, and you can move forward without actually it becoming a major problem. So that's personality differences. Then lack of recognition. People don't necessarily always seek out incentive. They don't always seek out a financial incentive or a bonus or anything like that. What often happens is that they just want some sort of recognition for the work done. Okay, if you've done a good job, you want to hear that you've done a good job. Sometimes it is necessary to have some sort of financial incentive, but the lack of that recognition for the job done can often cause unhappiness and conflict between often management and their staff. So recognition from a leader's point of view, from a manager's point of view, is very, very important and is always appreciated by their staff. All right, the unfair workloads. This is a classic cause of conflict. One person feels that they are working a great deal more than the next, but they're getting paid the same amount of money, or they have the same incentive that they have received. Okay, so this is often a conflict that happens between similar roles or similar staff members, where one is working a great deal more or greater hours than the next. Okay, so this can be a major problem and also needs to be dealt with as soon as possible. The next one is unrealistic deadlines. All right, so the example that we could use here is you've got a deadline for the end of the week, and that would require you to work further hours, overtime, and would be considered unrealistic if you were working your normal working hours. So this again comes down to the leaders, the managers, to be able to control and manage this in such a way that you don't necessarily end up in a position where the staff feel that they are being hard done by and are now required to work ridiculous hours in order to get the job done. So unrealistic deadlines can cause the anxiety and the stress, which can inevitably cause conflict between staff and management. All right, the last one there, lack of proper communication. Again, comes down to the communication from leaders. You want to be able to ensure that the communication of the objectives, the vision, the mission has been properly forwarded down to your staff members. The lack of the coordination or lack of proper communication can cause misunderstandings, and the staff members are unsure as to what's required of them and what the ultimate goal is. So it's important to have the vision, mission, the goals, objectives in place and communicated correctly to the staff members. All right. Okay, so here's an example that would be in your workbook, and the question is, explain the causes of conflict in businesses.
Right. Mr. Edwards, sorry
Sure.
that I interrupt. There's two things that you need to do here, or what is required of you. The first one is you must either identify those causes of conflict that we have just done from case studies, or they could ask you to explain causes of conflict. Now, if they ask you to explain, then the memo that we are going to put up, Mr. Edwards have already explained it for you, then this is the proposed memo. And please take a look at the split marking, and you will find it on page 17 in your workbook.
All right, so just remember the split marking. You want to get the full 2 marks per bullet, per point that you make, right? So you got to have your statement, and then your qualifier, your statement, and then some further information to qualify that statement. All right, let's have a look at the first one. Employees from different backgrounds do not always agree on the path they need to follow in pursuit of the organization's goals, right? So that refers back to the different backgrounds aspect that we referred to in the previous slide.
Once again, just naming the cause of conflict, and then just say what will it do? What will happen if that happens?
So if you just name the cause of conflict, you're only going to get the 1 out of the 2 marks.
Yes.
All right, so moving on to the next one there, not adhering to the rules of the organization may lead to conflict if the guilty party is confronted about the matter. All right, so that's the second aspect that we referred to earlier. Lack of cooperation could delay the production process and cause further frustration amongst the colleagues. All right, so lack of cooperation will give you the 1 mark, but then you need to provide the qualifier. What is actually going to happen there? And that would be that frustration could be caused amongst the colleagues and delay the production process.
Yeah, learners can actually just think back. They all have been involved in some kind of group work, and you would always have this one guy that doesn't pull his weight, and now everybody needs to pick up the slack. And then the project is delayed or it's not handed in on time because one person didn't do his bit.
100%. All right, so the different personalities of employees come to the fore when employees engage with each other. So we referred to that earlier. That can be problematic, but obviously you want to accept that people have different personalities in order to ensure that the objectives of the business are achieved. Lack of recognition by management of workers who perform additional duties at high levels. All right, so that lack of recognition we did speak about, and how important it is for managers to actually recognize that their staff have been performing well and have been at least getting the job done. All right, just a simple, well done, good job can suffice in that instance, but obviously sometimes a financial incentive is necessary. Unrealistic deadlines may increase the stress levels of certain employees. Right, stress not always a negative, but it can get to the stage that it causes anxiety within your staff, and unrealistic deadlines can do exactly that. Okay, and can be a negative and inevitably have a negative effect on the productivity and efficiency of the business. Unfair workloads may cause some employees to feel resentful towards other staff, resentful towards their management, because the management might be making decisions and might be a little bit biased towards one other person, and inevitably someone ends up working a great deal more than the next. Okay, and that can cause resentment. Okay, lastly, lack of clear communication may cause uncertainty amongst those employees. All right. Conflict management. Let's go a little bit further in depth here. Conflict management is a process of planning to prevent conflict and to resolve conflict as quickly as possible. We did say that conflict is necessary, but the ultimate byproduct or the result of conflict that has not been resolved can be a major disadvantage to a business. So it needs to be solved as soon as possible. Conflict management involves dealing with conflict in a fair, efficient, and sensitive manner. Obviously, emotions are involved as well. Okay, so it needs to be done in that fair manner, or an unbiased, neutral way, so that you are not showing any sort of bias towards any particular person. Efficient, meaning that it needs to be done as soon as possible, and also in a sensitive manner, because as I said, there are emotions involved and people can take offense quite easily under these circumstances. If conflict is not managed, it becomes worse and impacts negatively on the productivity of a business, and also can affect the rest of the staff. And that's the last thing that you want, a conflict between two members of staff that ends up being a major issue amongst the entire staff. Right. Lastly, managers need to be able to recognize and resolve conflict to promote cooperation and productivity. Managers obviously want their staff to be working together and cooperating in order to be productive and profitable at the end of the day. So it is a skill. Managers need to identify when there is potential conflict that will take place. All right. One aspect that we need to discuss under these circumstances is workplace forums. So workplace forums can be used in order to actually remove the potential conflict. Okay, so workplace forums is found underneath the Labor Relations Act. It has been created. It is necessary if you have 100 employees or more. It must be implemented. Okay, that's that third point there. To set up a workplace forum, there must be more than 100 employees in the business. It is possible that if you've got less than 100 employees, you can still set up a workplace forum. Now, what is a workplace forum? It has been created as a tool for collective bargaining, especially in small businesses. Right, so you've got the opportunity to go via a trade union in particular industries, right? Okay, but a workplace forum allows the staff to be part of the decision making within the business. And now that brings us to the second point on the screen. A workplace forum ensures that workers gain control over decision making that affects the working conditions. Okay, not necessarily got to do with the financial implications, and you'll see that in the differences between a workplace forum and trade union a little bit later. This creates room for direct communication with management. It allows staff members to have a say in the workplace. A trade union can apply to the Commission for Conciliation, Mediation and Arbitration, that's the CCMA, to establish a workplace forum. So if a trade union has identified within a business that a workplace forum is necessary, then it can apply to the CCMA that a workplace forum is implemented in that business, maybe because the staff members feel that they have not had their say, or they are not involved in the decision-making process. So the trade union can actually take action there and apply for a workplace forum. All right, that's a little details about the workplace forum. This is the type of question that can come about with regards to the functions of a workplace forum. Note, it says outline the functions of workplace forums. Okay, it is question 3 on page 16 of your workbook. Firstly, prevents you...
Mr. Edwards?
Yep.
Sorry, before we continue, I know that in the workbook it says list the functions of a workplace forum, but in the exam guideline it says only outline. You will never be asked to list a sentence. List is for small words. So that's why I changed this to outline. So if you look at this, you will see that the 2 marks are allocated at the end. But I know in the workbook it was list. But
Yep. Perfect. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Van Zyl. So again, coming back to the action verbs outline, you'll see 2 marks at the end of the sentence. So the first one there, we are talking about the functions of workplace forums. Prevent unilateral decisions made by employers on issues affecting the employees. Again, you're wanting employees to be involved in the decision-making process, which inevitably affects the employees. Okay, so if the employers are making decisions that affect the employees without the actual employees being involved, that's what the workplace forum is in place for, to avoid those sorts of situations. Second one there, encourages workers' participation in decision making, even if it doesn't necessarily affect the employees. At least the employees feel like they have had a say in the decision making. They have the right to be consulted by an employer on the following: restructuring of work methods, if there's any changes that need to be made, restructuring of the job functions, so maybe there's aspects of the job that need to be updated. Retrenching of workers. Now, retrenching of workers is maybe there's a particular department that the business cannot afford to keep on. They would call that retrenching of staff. And obviously, you want your employees to be involved in that process. Mergers and transfer of ownership, okay, from one entity to the next, okay. We've got an example of Twitter and how Elon Musk has taken over that process. That's transfer of ownership. And then job grading. All right, moving on to the next one. Just quickly there, promoting the interests of all employees in the workplace, making sure that all employees are involved and have a say. Enhance efficiency in the workplace through cooperation between staff and management. And then lastly, consulted by an employer and reaches consensus about work conditions. All right, consensus obviously meaning agreement between employer and employees. All right.
Mr. Edwards, the one thing that is conspicuously absent from that list of things on the functions is bargaining in terms of remuneration, which is not there because that's not the function of a workplace
100%.
forum. Please make sure that you know that, but it will come up later.
All right. So we're going to discuss that right now. All right.
Yes.
So this is difference between trade unions and workplace forums. So again, guys, difference can be asked in the sense of tabulate, where you set up a table like you've got in front of you now. Could be asked differentiate between trade unions and workplace forums. Right. So here we have the question difference between trade union and workplace forum. Important here is to look at the mark allocation. If it was 4 marks, then it would receive, or you would need to provide 1 point per aspect there. So 1 point for workplace forum and 1 point for trade union. All right, so let's have a look at the difference between trade unions and workplace forums. Firstly, workplace forum is part of the workplace, whereas a trade union is a separate entity. It can be sued and it can sue, right? Whereas a workplace forum is part of the business. Workplace forum does not deal with remuneration, right? That is the task that is given to the trade union. So the trade union will negotiate salaries and wages. Okay, for workplace forum, you can discuss things like your working conditions, but the trade union is in charge of these collective bargaining on salaries and wages. Workplace forum cannot organize a strike, whereas trade union can. Obviously, they need to go through the process of the Labour Relations Act. Then lastly, with regards to workplace forum, it is open to union and non-union members. So you don't need to sign up to a trade union to be part of a workplace forum and have your say. Whereas obviously in a trade union, you need to be what they call an organized worker. So you need to be a member of that trade union. So keep that in mind, guys. That is the differences between trade union and a workplace forum. Take note there. It's best to draw a table when you are required to differentiate or distinguish between a workplace forum and trade union. That goes across the board, guys. As soon as you're required to differentiate or distinguish, you can use a table to do that. All right, moving on. Okay, we are going to just go through a couple of consolidation questions. Okay, these are 5 multiple choice questions. The first one refers to what Ms. Van Zyl went through earlier, the stage of development where the team members are working on their own and get to know one another, okay, would be forming. Okay, obviously this is the first stage. Okay, they're still working on their own, but they're getting to know each other. Moving on to the next one, teamwork is important because it allows workers to learn from each other. Okay, that would be the most obvious answer there. Learn from each other, very, very important aspect of teamwork. Conflict refers to clash of opinions between 2 or more people. Now remember, it doesn't necessarily need to be 2 people, it can be 2 or more parties. Okay. This is a structure that consists of employees who make sure that the employer does not make unilateral decisions. We've just been through that. That is a workplace forum. Okay. Lastly, this structure negotiates with employers regarding salaries and wages. Now, you should know by now what we just went through. It is not a workplace forum. It has to be a trade union. Okay, trade unions negotiate salaries and wages, whereas a workplace forum can discuss things like working conditions. All right, so that brings us to the end of this session. Ms. Van Zyl, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Edwards, and good luck for the exams. The final push is ahead, guys. So I wish you the best of luck for your exams. 250 mark questions, easy peasy.
All right, all the very best, grade 11s. We wish you all the luck in the world.